All right, everyone, so that we are on time and can rock and roll with something I have planned for you at the end, let's get started with the presentation, Coding Within Core Courses. As you can tell, there were supposed to be two of us here today, but Victor is actually teaching summer school and wasn't able to get coverage. But no worries, I'm ready and we can begin. So, as a former elementary, middle school teacher and librarian, I realized that teachers are being tasked with teaching computer science, and they're often having to do it within core content areas. And as I have been integrating computer science I've actually had the luxury of doing computer science as a standalone course. I still haven't forgotten my fellow colleagues who don't have that luxury. And so, one of the things that really intrigues me is how can we integrate computer science, especially at the K through 8 level, into some of the activities that are already occurring in the classroom. And so, as I have been exploring tools, different softwares, different physical computing aspects, that question of how we can integrate computer science into K through 8 has been in the back of my mind. And so, these are just a few tips and tricks and some software programs. Some of them include coding, and some of them are ways to integrate technology into the classroom. But as I've been working through this, I've noticed some really great examples that will work in the classroom, in the core content, and expand students and teachers' repertoires on what is available as to how they present information. And so, what you see here are just the beginnings of some of my thought processes using variety of softwares. Last week, I had an opportunity to observe a camp that was using MakeCode Arcade. And if you've ever seen any of my presentations, you've probably realized that when I fall in love with the technology, I fall in love with the technology. And so I have fallen in love with MakeCode Arcade, but that does not, I'm not going to throw away the things that I know work and that are practical. And so with that, we'll begin. We're going to look at some lessons that would be easily integratable into core content areas, starting with math. As we were working in the summer camp last week, the students were using MakeCode Arcade. And if you teach elementary school, you realize that coordinates, XY coordinates, that geometric unit, sometimes seems rather nebulous to students. Like they get it on paper, but they really aren't. Like they're not sure of the practical uses. Well, last week, as I was in this summer camp, Make Code Arcade brought coordinate planes into focus for the students there. There were fourth grade students who were headed to fifth grade, and when I say they rocked with this, they really rocked with this because they made a connection between what they had learned in math class to what they were learning in programming a game. And so let's look at that. So I pulled out the core content area of math, and coordinate planes are usually in the geometry unit, and it says coordinate, use graph points to solve real world and mathematical problems. Well, if you look at that code here from Make Code Arcade, and where it says set Snelly to position X, and it gives a coordinate, and then Y and gives a coordinate, students were amazed to see how that worked and how they actually knew which axis was X and which axis was Y. And so as we were going through this, you could just see the light bulb moments of them connecting something they had learned in the classroom that they probably had no idea was going to be that relevant into creating a game. So as we were progressing through the code, I broke it down here for you. When they would click into the boxes for the X and Y coordinates, the graph would pop up at the bottom, and they could play around with the positioning of their sprite or their character. And for them, it was like, oh, wow. And so I could really see how this could lend itself well to a math classroom, taking what they've learned about coordinate planes and having a practical application of it would really enhance what they're learning. In Scratch, my tried and true Scratch. Uh, Scratch has been around for a long time, but I don't think that its capabilities have been fully realized in the core content areas. Because teachers and myself included, when I taught, I saw computer science as this separate entity, not thinking of how I could use it in the classroom until I actually did it. And once I taught, I actually stumbled upon coding and brought it into my sixth grade language arts classroom. What the students were able to do with coding in that classroom just opened my eyes to all kinds of possibilities. And so I know, having been a librarian for grades K through 5, that recognizing patterns is a standard that is usually taught in kindergarten and first grade. And so the Raspberry Pi website has Scratch projects where students can code these projects. They give them beginnings of the projects, and then they can follow the directions and code these projects and learn more about patterns. And so, as you can see there, I've done a screen capture of the Raspberry Pi Scratch tutorials, and the link is there. And students go through the tutorial and make different patterns. So it starts out with a ballerina on stage, another key aspect of kindergarten is doing things in sequence. And so, as you can see from the graphic, sequence is already listed at the top. So that'll be something that they'll be familiar with, but using computer science to help them navigate it even more. And so as they go through the project, they will start making a pattern. And with their pattern, the performer, the character on stage actually does something. So I feel like that would be a really great way to connect computer science and core content areas for students as young as kindergarten. I see someone is asking for the link. The link should be at the top of the chat window. I'll share it again. Language arts. Again, this was a topic that I taught in middle school. And for this, I would suggest using Google Applied Digital Skills, Scratch, and Make Code Arcade. Now, while Google Applied Digital Skills is not a coding platform, it is a very useful instructional technology tool. What I found with my students is that digital skills really applied to what they were learning. And then different questions that they would, in middle school, we often were talking about career and college prospects. And Google Applied Digital Skills has done a really great job of tying in everyday skills such as resume building, doing a budget, simple life skills, but they've integrated them with technology so that students can apply what they're learning and then make it relevant to the classroom situation. And so here, two lessons that I just pulled out were about creating a flyer for a Juneteenth celebration or any other cultural celebration, and then creating a photo journal in Google Docs. I had the pleasure of working with two of the Google staff members in piloting this creating a flyer for the Juneteenth. I'm sorry, we actually did a Black History lesson that we piloted with a class that I was working with. And the students really enjoyed it because they were able to pretend that they were planning their family reunion. And in COVID, just the thought of being able to plan an activity that they might one day be able to carry out really buoyed the students to get involved and it made real world connections. And so if you haven't checked out the Google Applied Skills lately, they have really revamped it and is very classroom friendly. If you're a Google Classroom user, then it just integrates so well into that platform. And even if you're not, the lessons are standalone, and you will probably find many lessons that are applicable to your classroom. As you know, in a language arts classroom, setting, character, parts of a story are all integrated into what students have to learn for language arts. And one of the neat programs that I was able to use with the younger students was Scratch Junior. And in that, as you see right there, they're going to choose their background, which is just a setting, and then they're going to choose their character. And it actually says choose a character in Scratch Junior, while in Scratch, in the upper level Scratch program, it says choose a sprite. But just those two activities right there, you can tie computer science into what they are doing in the language arts classroom. Again, back to Make Code Arcade. One of the first things in many of the tutorials is to access a block of code where they have to pick out the setting for their story. And last week in the camp that I observed, the students not only would pick out a background for their game, they could, when they started to make multiple levels of the game, they were talking about scenes, and they learned what assets were, and how to edit these backgrounds and characters in Make Code Arcade. And so using we're actually gonna look at Make Code Arcade using just some simple tools that were already integrated into the program. They were able to figure out where their story for their video games were going to be set. That ties so well into language arts and just the creation of storylines that it was very interesting to see how students would pick a background and their whole plot line could just change based upon the background that they chose. Also within Make Code Arcade, we were able to create characters. As you see here, I took a screenshot of this one. There are characters that are built in, but you can also do searches and find characters and build them yourself. So again, tying in the math and the graphing, one activity that students did was to look up 8-bit game sprites, and then they graphed that on paper and then transposed that into this Make Code editor here. The character that you see on screen is actually one that's really readily available within the gallery of Make Code Arcade. But again, tying in, creating a story, language arts, and building a storyline. Now, for science, I am a big proponent of physical computing. One of my colleagues says that he thinks I have a tattoo of a Raspberry Pi. I do not, because I am in love with multiple physical computing devices, and the microbit is just one of them. Having learned about the microbit last year at our summit, I have wholeheartedly embraced it and introduced it to many of my colleagues. What I love about the microbit is that it is a standalone product. You get a battery pack and it's powered up, and you have the power of pretty much a cell phone in your hand without the keyboard, but you program it and it'll do different things. And so for science, if my children were here, they would tell you that I cannot keep a plant alive. They're lucky to still be alive some days, but plants, they don't really make it around here. And so one of my biggest issues is figuring out how much sunlight and how much shade an area gets. Well, with the microbit, I can actually figure out how much shade or sunlight an area gets. You can, using the projects page on microbit.org, the microbit has a built-in sunlight sensor, and you can program it to actually capture the data of how much sunlight or shade an area is getting. What I really, really love about the microbit and other physical resource tools is that they give you these projects, and then you can manipulate them as you would like. So you'll see the link there in the bottom for the microbit, the sunlight sensor. But on that projects page, it gives you a multitude of projects that you can use in your classroom, or as I'm doing at my house, to keep from killing plants. Uh, an extension of that is that students could actually use sensors that, as you can see, the crocodile clips are there, and the materials list is right there. You get a microbit, two nails, and two crocodile clips, and you can actually figure out the soil moisture of a plant. If you're able to do that project, the science behind the project is included on the teacher projects page. And so not only does it give you the code, which you can see in the second graphic there, it also explains the science. So that keeps you from having to be the expert on everything, but it gives you a great overview of how to do the project and what your results should look like. And if you're new to coding, you may have the science part down, but if you're new to coding, to have that information right there at your fingertips really does help. Tinkercad is a great 3D software, but they also have simulations included. And what I love about Tinkercad is just the variety of activities that you can find within the software. And so here you'll see there's a simulation. I looked up circuits, and it gives you simple circuits that you can work on and complete. Now, students don't have to have the physical components, but if they do, then that's even better, because they can simulate what it's supposed to do, set theirs up in real life, and then actually complete the prototype in real life. So you'll see there, I did a search for basic components, and it gives you a multitude of basic components, such as the resistor, an LED, push buttons, a potentiometer, a capacitor, different tools that you can easily find on local websites. But if you're here in our area, like my favorite store of choice is Micro Center, and I go in there and spend way more money than I should. But looking at their website, you can then look through simulations for other tools that you may have in your computer science classroom, such as your Arduino, a microbit, and circuit assemblies. And so if students don't have access to these physical tools, they can still learn about what would be going on by using the simulators in Tinkercad. Physics was something that I was very surprised to see in Make Code Arcade last week. If you are a gamer, you will notice that this is, I'm going to say, an off-brand version of Galaga. And so in Make Code Arcade, students were able to make their own version of Galaga. And as we were going through the code, I was very surprised to see velocity. And so I had third graders last week that knew that to set their bogies to a certain velocity so that it would go at a certain speed. And then we learned how to get the sprite to move from one side of the screen or the other. Again, you see there's coordinates within there because you set your velocity to a certain speed, and then you set your position to a certain point at X or Y. And so students were able to learn a new vocabulary word and then apply it immediately and see the actions take place on their screen. It was one of the most phenomenal weeks of learning that I've been involved in a while. So moving on to history. I started out coding with blocks when I was teaching in the classroom, and Scratch has been a go-to for me. But I did not realize that they had educator guides. Near me somewhere is my book that I have that's dog-eared for Scratch. And I did not realize that you could find educator guides upon the website. My suggestion for using Scratch in history is to have students either create or find backgrounds of a historic event and then reenact different things that took place during that event. I am probably 35, 36 years removed from third grade. But I remember doing a project with my third grade teacher where we actually created a diorama of a scene and just had to give an overview of history. Now, if that stuck with me all these years later, just imagine what doing something like this in a coding platform could do for your students. So if you go to those educator guides, it gives you an overview of the lesson, the materials you'll need. It gives you formatting for the timing and all of that. And this could very easily be integrated into a number of core subjects. But when thinking about history, I felt like this one would really do a great job of teaching students and having them engaged in the content. All right, so with that, I want to show you what I fell in love with, why I fell in love with Make Code Arcade last week during camp. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. If anyone has any questions as we transition to Make Code Arcade, please feel free to type those into the chat. And we're actually going to look at Make Code Arcade for the remainder of this session. Just checking the chat here. If you will go to Arcade within Make Code, I'm going to give you an overview of the site and some tips for how you can get that started with your students. If you type in arcade.makecode.com, it comes up, and I'm going to show you what we did, or what the teachers did in camp last week that was so successful with the students, and just give you a few tips on how to get started. So when you come into Make Code Arcade, this is your home. The project is still in beta, so there are some things that you may be like, oh, that doesn't quite work how I thought it did, but they are constantly updating this, and it is a great product even as it's in beta. When you get to the home page, what you will see are your projects that you have been working on. Now, if your screen probably is blank right now, and all you see is new project. What we did when working with this with students was to start here with this beginner skill map. It was very informative, and on my PC, as you see, there's some completed marks, but on my PC, I ended up completing the whole tutorial. We actually started here with the students and told them if they were to learn the fundamentals, then we would get to the fun. And so that was our buy-in from day one. The instructors were like, if you learn the basics of gaming, then you can apply this across multiple platforms. And they really bought into that. And because they bought into that, they were able to do some phenomenal work that we'll be sharing out at a later time. There were students that were, as they were going through these games, and even as I was going through the tutorials, I was like, oh, that's how they did this in Super Mario, or oh, I've seen that on some of the games, like the sports games that my sons play. And students were able to then take all these skills that they learn on the skills map, and it starts out very simple. And what I really liked about it were the tutorials. And so we'll click on one here so you can see how they set them up. As you are working through it, they give you an overview. You hit start. And at the top of the screen, I'm going to start fresh so you can see what's what. Make Code Arcade does not, you don't have to be the expert. And so students can actually, I would begin each session with giving students an overview of what was going on, but then students can actually read through these. If they get stuck, there's hints here. And then they just clicked through them and did all of the different activities. And once they did the activities, they would have, by the end of these steps, this one has 11, they would have a working game. And so as you can see, I skipped ahead to the end. If I click here, I'd actually have music. But what was really good about it was they were able to do this on their own if I was going too slow. But is my screen frozen? Oh, it is. Let's see. Thank you, Stacy. Let me refresh. Actually, I need to share another tab. That's what it is. Thank you for that. So here in the skills map, I'll start over. Students, you begin by giving them an overview of what they're going to do. And the skills map started with making greeting cards. And then those greeting cards had animations. And the animations, you could then do different games that we've probably all spent hours, that we probably spent hours of our time on your phone. They were actually able to make and complete these games during the coding sessions. And so again, the tutorials each have the directions at the top. You can toggle around the screen, and as you do something, so for instance, this one says choose a background from the gallery by clicking here. So I'm clicking here. Just going to pick a background if that's already there. Hit done. And as you see, the screen, there's a little lag. The screen goes black as it is doing what you have told it to do. And then it actually performs your code. I'm just going to put one note in here because I don't want to be annoying. But as you see, the Game Boy, as I say, I tell the students, it reminded me of old school Game Boy. As you complete the code, it turns black. And then as soon as you're done, it refreshes. And what you've done actually shows up on the Game Boy screen there. And again, with these, the instructions of the camp, they work through the different tutorials that they wanted the kids to do. And so then if students were stuck, they were able to go back and say, okay, at this step, do this, because they were working with students from grades 3 through 7. So it was very simple for the students, the middle school students, but some of the third graders, they had to help. And so if you work through these tutorials, you end up building either a game or pieces of a game. And when you get to the end and click finish, it will tell you if you completed that level. And then you can actually share your project, or you can save it to your projects. But what we did was have the students share it, and it would say publish. They would copy their code and then email it to them. And that was something that I recommended them doing because they were not on their personal computers. They were on school computers. So that is the skills map. I'm going to stop sharing that and then show you a couple of more features of this webpage. But if anybody has any questions, please type them into the chat. Give you another overview, and then I'm gonna let you just play around with it. If someone can create, you could technically, in the 20 minutes we have remaining, complete a game and share it out. So I'm gonna share one more time. So going back to the home screen, if it is your personal computer, it saves what you've done. But if it's not, then again, have students publish that project, copy the code, and email it to themselves. So again, we started with the skills map. A few of the students made it through these two components, but what was really good are these tutorials here. Now, they are a bit more complicated than the skills map, or at least the beginning of the skills map, but students were able to go through these tutorials and create games that you've seen. So again, these are not, since those names belong to companies, they kind of changed them up. But the amount of skills that students learned between this skill map and these tutorials was phenomenal. And if you go through those or have students go through those, it shows you how to complete games that have multiple parts. And then there are some live coding activities that have been done where they have instructors that will walk you through building these games that you see in the tutorial. Of course, a really great part of it was just going through and playing games. And then you also learned about arts and crafts. If you had time for that, there's lessons, and it shows you how to integrate these different aspects of Make Code Arcade into some of the classes that you may be teaching. So if you're teaching an introductory computer science course, they have it here. If you want to integrate this into AP computer science, you can do that as well. I did not get a chance to navigate these two, but we did look through these right here. And then there is hardware that you could buy to actually download the games that you make onto them. So again, it was a very useful software that by changing the backgrounds, creating different characters, you can integrate into the core courses. And so with that, I would love to take these last 20 minutes, be available. If I were going to start with a tutorial, I would start with the one at the beginning, or you can start with the skills map. But the Chase the Pizza was a really good one. And then there were students that varied that by putting their mascot in there, and they were chasing their rival. They were chasing points. They have the school where I was at, they have dragon dollars. And so one of the kids created a dragon dollar. Another student created a game where she drew the dogs. And then the owner was chasing the dog as it was trying to grab the treat. And so with that, I'm just going to let you explore that site and ask me any questions, or give me some suggestions for ways that you have incorporated coding into your content area. Oh, Tiffany, thank you. I know it was shorter than planned. I thought that 10 tips would give me enough time, would cover an hour, but that's not quite the case. But please, if anyone else has any suggestions on how you've integrated how you've integrated computer science into the classroom, especially at the K-8 level, where, again, having been an elementary teacher, I know how much you are expected to do in a day. And so if we can figure out ways to integrate these activities, because I'm telling you, if you build them in at the beginning of the year, especially like doing a tutorial in that off time, at the beginning of the year where you're filling out things and the kids are kind of just waiting around, integrate these tutorials as a warm up or, as a ticket out the door, and then figure out a way to tie it into your subject area. The one of the instructors last week, she worked at the school districts. They have a bio center, and so they have a wetlands area and all of that. The instructor who was just facilitating for the Georgia Tech instructors who were virtual, she actually learned enough that she created a game that she's going to use with the students when they come to the wetlands. It happens to be the one that says "Time Flies," and it has habitats and animals and different things like that on it. She actually has now created a game from being the facilitator of that week-long camp that she's going to integrate into her classroom. So just checking the chat. Again, if anyone else has, hi, Markley, if anyone else has any ways that you've integrated CS into core content areas, I'd love to hear from you. That awkward 5-second wait time seems even longer when you're on a video screen. So Scott has said, have students create simulations and experiments in Scratch? Absolutely. Even capturing pictures from their experiments, they could do. I like that, especially for science. Having been, if you can't tell, I've taught a lot of different areas. I was a 6th grade science teacher, earth science teacher as well. And I now see so many ways where if I had known more about Scratch, I could have gotten the students to integrate it. But yes, have them create simulations and experiments in Scratch, and that helps them apply their knowledge. And if someone isn't able to get there, then they can see what the class did. We had special permission in our science class for students to be able to use their phones because they were capturing data and experiments and different things like that. And they were really good about it, about not abusing that privilege. Scott says use the variables and formulas and then the ask command to run it in different ways. Exactly. That's for those of us who struggle with algebra like I did. I think if I had seen ways to use variables in a real world format, such as these games, maybe it would have made a better connection for me. And so I could see that being very useful. Can anyone see being arcade being of use in their classroom? Well, with that, I hope that you found something useful in the presentation. I'm going to check the schedule here to see. We're going to get out a few minutes early. But if you're playing around with MakeCode, then please continue to do so. And if you actually end up making something, share it here in the chat. But on the schedule, these sessions run from 10 to 11, and then we have a 10-minute break. So I'm just going to pull up one of the tutorials and work on that while we're waiting. But you are welcome to take a break and then join us again. We have a featured panel at 11:10 that will be taking place on the stage. After that, we'll have lunch and networking. And then I have another session with the microbit. So if you want to learn more about the microbit, please come and tune in. So Michelle says, thank you, Scott. And Michelle says, do you recommend it? Do you recommend any resources to learn more about Scratch? Actually, Michelle, I'm going to show you this book that I have sitting over here because it's my go-to. So 1 second. It's an older book. Oh, I'm on this screen. That Scratch Programming for Teens. This is not my dog-eared copy. Like I actually went through this whole book. I've actually, again, it's Scratch Programming for Teens. It's an older book, but it still was very helpful. There's one that's called, and it's called How to Ace Everything in Computer Science, I think is the name of it. Where I don't have it right here with me. It's actually in my bag because I showed it to someone else. It's a little fat notebook. Scott has added something from Harvard there. But I'm still old school, so I like books. I like to flip through it, make notes, and do all of that. But let me find that notebook book, and it's less than $10. I'm actually going to recommend it to a school that we're going to be working with as the book for students. And it's at the middle school. Everything you need to know about coding and computer science. I'm going to put it into the chat. I found mine at Sam's for less than $10. You know, one of these favorite stores that is having a major sale today has it on sale for $8.54. I think it just, yeah. Sorry, that link is so long, but it's Everything Computer Science Coding Notebook. It's a really great resource. It says it's aimed at middle school, but I found it engaging. It looks kind of like a graphic novel. And so it was really good. So there's the long link. And then I can show you what it looks like. It is literally in my bag right now. You're very welcome. And again, that in the slideshow, those workshops, if you work through those workshops, you'll be able to do it. The site that Scott shared is called Scratch Ed. And I can tell you guys something. I just did Raspberry Pi. If you look on their projects page, it's not only projects that you can use for the Raspberry Pi. They have a lot of Scratch programs, Scratch programming guides. They have a digital making at home, which is videos, and they actually walk you through how to do activities. And most of the time, they're only using Scratch. They have a projects page with their code club, and I'll put all these links in the chat in just a second, where you tell them what resources you have, and then it customizes it. Michelle, we should connect. We should connect. That's actually what Constellations does. So definitely make sure that you connect with me. I'm writing your name down here. Stacy, I'm not doing a Raspberry Pi session here, but what I was gonna say is that I actually just did some classes for them that they're going to be talking about at the Pathfinders Institute, but I think they're going to release it just like globally. So if you please follow me on Twitter, it's my initials, and I'm typing that in here. So my Twitter handle is my initials. I've been a little slack because it's summer and there's just a lot going on. But as soon as they release those, I will I'll put it on Twitter and all my other sites. Let me find if you just most of these companies, what I've realized is if you go to their websites, they have just a plethora of resources available for teachers because they know that that teachers, a lot of us didn't come to this. Most of us, I mean, didn't come to this with a coding background. I have instructional technology degrees, but even that is different from being a coder. Yes, I'll show the book and put it in the link as well. So there's the Raspberry Pi site. And I'll look on Amazon real quick and see if this one is called Scratch Programming for Teens. It's an old copy, but it was still very useful. The copyright on this one was 2009, but again, it was still very useful. Some things were not what we're out of date, but the good thing about Scratch is that they're just on version 3, if I'm not mistaken. So some things were still very similar. So the 2 books, and let me look it up on Amazon real quick. Thank y'all for being engaging. It's really hard when you're just sitting here by yourself with only your puppy and your child walking around in the room. So thank y'all for being really engaging. So here's the first book, Everything You Need to Know to Ace Computer Science and Coding in One Big Fat Notebook. The first one of these I saw was for language arts. And so I used it in the language arts classroom, and it looks like a graphic novel. So the kids and I both really enjoyed it. It gives really great definitions, and it has really thorough information. And so it goes through Scratch, if I'm not mistaken, Python. I was still just working through some of the notes and vocabulary of it. So that's that one. And the other one, let's see if it's still a thing, because again, it was published a while ago for teens. There it is. So that one's and it's Scratch 2.0. Again, the newest version of Scratch is 3.0, but I was using one that was a older version than that, and it was still very relevant. So that's the other one that I would recommend. Michelle, if you're still here, what district are you with? Yes, I can send that link as well. It's always interesting to hear about people as they're beginning their journey. Okay, we have to connect. I'm actually going to be doing some programming in your district. That's Albany, as someone who lived there knows how to say it. So yes, we definitely have to connect. But there, I'm going to paste that link. Stop sharing. Da-da-da-da-da. Scratch, and I'll put it in the presentation as well. I'll put both of those books in the presentation as well. That one and the Big Fat Notebook. Any other questions? Thank you guys so much for being engaging. Victor was not able to make it because he's teaching summer school, and most of us understand that. But he is a very good person to know as well. So yeah, just checking a message from him. Any other questions? We're about at time. I'll add these 2 books to the presentation so that you have those. I'm trying to think of anything else that I could share that might be helpful. Oh, thank you. Thank you. See, that's why I like teachers. Y'all are so encouraging. Because it doesn't matter how many times you do this, it can still be nerve-wracking when you're talking to adults and not children. And so I sincerely appreciate it. And I'll also share the Scratch Ed website. Um, I'll put that in there as well. So the presentation link won't change, but I'm going to add some sessions. Thank you. I think it's Rashi. Thank you so much. Yes. As a former librarian, books are my thing. I have a Kindle, all of that, but books will always hold a really special place in my heart. So with that, I'm going to go ahead again. You have a 10-minute break after this session, and then we have featured panels. Please reach out to me. I really mean it. My email address is there. Michelle, I'm going to reach out to you, and my email address will also be in the presentation. So with that, you guys go ahead, take a break, and then we hope to see you back. Really, there's a really good tip. There's a company called No Starch Press. When you purchase books from their site, they provide a PDF with book delivery. I am writing that down. I did not know that. And I will add it into the presentation as well. Free. I like free and worth having. Free PDF. All right, guys. Thank you so much. So hope to see you at the panel session. And then I'm doing a microbit session, but all of our sessions will be available on our Constellations website. And if you haven't had a chance, go check out some of the virtual booths in the expo. So thank you.